Okay, so today we're going to look at criticisms of natural moral law and just some of the debate surrounding it. So let's get straight into it. The first one I think that's really important is, does the universe actually have a telos? This is the thing that is fundamental, right, to Aquinas' understanding of ethics and the world, that everything moves towards a particular purpose. That is, of course, what we mean by the word telos. Now, the advance in science has really changed our idea of the natural world. And what it leads to is a realization that a teleological understanding of nature, what we might call a teleological metaphysics, is non-productive. It doesn't help us understand the world. Science rests upon a mechanistic metaphysics. So that is essentially kind of the idea of there being simple facts in the world with no real purpose to them. They are rather just events that occur. If you believe in teleology, if you believe in some sort of purpose, then you are likely to believe that these things happen for a reason, that there is some sort of ultimate aim involved. But if you are mechanistic, you don't think there is an aim, but rather that these just occur as a matter of cause and effect. So these things, for instance, these kind of atoms, I suppose, is what they are. They happen because of a previous cause, and that cause itself is caused by something else, and so on. Not looking for what is the good that's occurring here, what is the thing they're aiming at, but just what's caused it, what's the effect, allows us to develop a much more complex understanding of the world. So mechanistic metaphysics is just cause and effect. And it is much more productive than a teleological understanding. The idea that there is some sort of purpose, and so is more likely to be correct. Now, how might you reply if you're Aquinas? Well, we don't have Aquinas' reply. He was writing before the great advance in science. But we do have Edward Feser. So Edward Feser is a modern supporter of Aquinas. And Feser replies by saying that our minds are teleological. That is, they do think in terms of purposes. And he says it would be strange if they were the only teleological things. They can't be alone as the only teleological things. It would in fact make more sense, he reckons, if everything in the universe had some sort of purpose. Okay, so that's how you might reply to that. Let's move on to the next objection, which is the is-ought problem. The is-ought gap. Now, this was proposed by David Hume. Quick side note, you might want to use here instead G.E. Moore's naturalistic fallacy, which you'll find in meta-ethics, but I'm choosing to cover the is-ought gap here because I think it's relatively simple to understand and definitely applies to Aquinas. Now, Hume says that you can't get an ought statement, so something that obliges you to behave in a particular way, like a moral statement, from an is statement. Now, an is statement is a matter of fact. So consider this as an example. Let's say that you have got an essay on natural moral law due tomorrow. That would be an is statement. That's a fact. If you don't hand it in, your teacher will be disappointed in you. Another is statement. If you do hand it in, you will get to understand natural moral law better. Another is statement. Well, from those statements, can we produce the conclusion that you ought to produce your essay? No, not logically. Why not? Well, because you might not care about any of those things. Hume thinks you need the sentiments. A sentiment is essentially an emotion to move us from the is to the ought. So if your emotion is fear of disappointing your teacher or desire to academically enrich yourself or whatever, then we get the you ought to hand your essay in tomorrow statement from that. And of course, what's going on with Aquinas is that natural law is committing the is-ought gap problem. It's going from the is of, well, telos, this is the purpose, to the ought of bring about that telos, or adhere to the telos. Well, what if you don't want to? Now, there are multiple ways to reply here. I think one of the best ways to reply to this objection is simply to say that it isn't committing the is-ought gap because of synderesis. Synderesis, of course, is our inclination, so kind of a sentiment, to do good. And that's how we go from the this is the good to you ought to do the good. Well, because we want to, because we naturally are inclined to do so. One final objection, and now this is an interesting objection because actually historically it comes way before Aquinas, but it's still in many ways relevant to this problem, and this is the Euthyphro dilemma, which was proposed by Socrates to the character Euthyphro. Socrates is on trial for his life when he proposes this. And outside of the court, he's talking to a young man called Euthyphro. And Euthyphro has taken his father to trial for murdering a slave. And Socrates is shocked at this idea because he thinks, of course, slaves don't have the same kinds of rights as humans. Lovely ancient Greeks. And so he asks, why do you think it's wrong to murder a slave? And Euthyphro says, well, because the gods have ordered it. And so Socrates, or really this is Plato, because it's a Platonic dialogue, it's Plato who wrote it down, gives us this question. Is something good because God commands it, or does God command it because it's good? So here really is this slightly odd distinction. Is something good because God commands it, or does God command it because it is good? Well, let's just examine very quickly the implications of both of these. It's good because God commands it. Well, if it's good because God commands it, then that's a big problem as we move forward in time out of the Socrates-Plato problem to Aquinas, because then it's kind of good on God's whim. It isn't absolute, which is, of course, what Aquinas would want. Or does God command it because it is good? Is the goodness, the set of moral rules, above God and God is merely a mouthpiece? Well, if that's the case, then God isn't omnipotent, because there is a set of rules above him. Omnipotent, remember, is all powerful. And if there are a set of rules that God must obey, then God is not all powerful. Well, if you're Aquinas, how might you reply to that? I actually think that Aquinas has already applied to this. So this reply comes directly from Aquinas. And his answer is that the good is in the mind of God. Eternally and unchanging. Now that's significant, right? This is the eternal law. So it is good because God commands it, but it's good because it's already in God's reasoning. So it doesn't follow that it's based upon God's whim. It's rather this absolute set of things that must be true, this set of goods. And God commands it because it is good, actually, but that's the divine law, his interpretation of his own set of rules. So there isn't some set of rules above him that tells him how to behave. It is rather something that is already within him. So that's Aquinas' reply to the Euthyphro dilemma indirectly, that God is omnipotent, and it is not, the natural law is not based upon his whim, but rather is innate within his eternal and unchanging reason. Okay, so there are 3 objections to natural moral law and also 3 replies.